An open entrance to the closed palace of the king by an anonymous sage and lover of truth. The author's preface. I, being an anonymous adept, a lover of learning and a philosopher, have decreed to write this little treatise of medicinal, chemical, and physical arcana in the year 1645, after the birth of Christ, and in the 23rd year of my age, to assist in conducting my straying brethren out of the labyrinth of error, and with the further object of making myself known to other sages, holding aloft a torch which may be visible far and wide to those who are groping in the darkness of ignorance. The contents of this book are not fables, but real experiments which I have seen, touched, and handled, as an adept will easily conclude from these lines. I have written more plainly about this art than any of my predecessors. Sometimes I have found myself on the very verge of breaking my vow, and once or twice had to lay down my pen for a season. But I could not resist the inward prompting of God, which impelled me to persevere in the most loving course, who alone knows the heart, and to whom only be glory forever. Hence I undoubtedly gather that in this last age of the world, many will become blessed by this arcanum, through what I have thus faithfully written, for I have not willingly left anything doubtful to the young beginner. I know many who with me do enjoy this secret, and am persuaded that many more will also rejoice in its possession. Let the holy will of God perform what it pleases, though I confess myself an unworthy instrument through whom such great things should be effected. Chapter 1. Of the need of sulfur for producing the elixir. Whoever wishes to possess this secret golden fleece, which has virtue to transmute metals into gold, should know that our stone is nothing but gold digested to the highest degree of purity and subtle fixation, to which it can be brought by nature and the highest effort of art. And this gold, thus perfected, is called our gold, no longer vulgar, and is the ultimate goal of nature. These words, though they may be surprising to some of my readers, are true, as I, an adept, bear witness, and though otherwise persons entertain chimerical dreams, nature herself is most wonderfully simple. Gold, then, is the one true principle of purification, but our gold is twofold. One kind is mature and fixed, the yellow latten, and its heart or center is pure fire, whereby it is kept from destruction and only purged in the fire. This gold is our male, and it is sexually joined to a more crude white gold, the female seed. The two together, being indissolubly united, constitute our fruitful hermaphrodite. We are told by the sages that corporal gold is dead, until it be conjoined with its bride, with whom the coagulating sulfur, which in gold is outwards, must be turned inwards. Hence it follows that the substance which we require is mercury. Concerning this substance, Geber uses the following words: Blessed be the Most High God who created mercury and made it an all-prevailing substance. And it is true that unless we had mercury, alchemists might still boast themselves, but all their boasting would be in vain. Hence it is clear that our mercury is not common mercury, for all common mercury is a male that is corporal, specific, and dead, while our mercury is spiritual, female, living, and life-giving. Attend closely to what I say about our mercury, which is the salt of the wise men, The alchemist who works without it is like a man who draws a bow without a string, yet it is found nowhere in a pure state above ground, but has to be extracted by a cunning process out of the substance in which it exists. Chapter 2 of the component principles of the mercury of the sages. Let those who aim to purify mercury by means of salts, feces, and other foreign bodies, and by strange chemical processes, understand that though our water is variously composed, it is yet only one thing, formed by the concretion of diverse substances of the same essence. The components of our water are fire, the vegetable Saturnian liquid, and the bond of mercury. The fire is that of mineral sulfur, which yet can be called neither mineral nor metallic, but partakes of both characters. It is a chaos, or spirit, because our fiery dragon that overcomes all things is yet penetrated by the odor of the Saturnian liquid, its blood growing together with the Saturnian sap into one body, which is yet neither a body, since it is all volatile, nor a spirit, since in fire it resembles melted metal. It may thus be very properly described as chaos, or the mother of all metals. From this chaos I can extract everything, even the sun and moon, without the transmutatory elixir. It is called our arsenic, our air, our moon, our magnet, and our chalybs. These names representing the different stages of its development, even unto the manifestation of the kingly diadem, which is cast out of the menstruum of our harlot. Learn then, who are the friends of Cadmus? Who is the serpent that devoured them? What the hollow oak to which Cadmus spitted the serpent? Learn who are the doves of Diana that overcome the green lion by gentleness, even the Babylonian dragon which kills everything with its venom. Learn also what are the winged shoes of Mercury, and who are those nymphs whom he charms by means of his incantations. Chapter 3 Concerning the chalybs of the sages. Our chalybs is the true key of our art, without which the torch could in no wise be kindled. And as the true magi have delivered many things concerning it, so among vulgar alchemists there is great contention as to its nature. It is the ore of gold, the purest of all spirits, a secret, infernal, and yet most volatile fire, the wonder of the world, the result of heavenly virtues in the lower world, for which reason the Almighty has assigned to it a most glorious and rare heavenly conjunction, even that notable sign whose nativity is declared in the east. This star was seen by the wise men of old, and straightway they knew that a great king was born in the world. When you see it in its constellation, follow it to the cradle, and there you will behold a beautiful infant. Remove the impurities, look upon the face of the king's son, open your treasury, give to him gold, and after his death he will bestow on you his flesh and blood, the highest medicine in the three monarchies of the earth. Chapter 4 of the magnet of the sages. As steel is attracted toward the magnet, and the magnet turns towards the steel, so also our magnet attracts our chalybs. Thus, as chalybs is the ore of gold, so our magnet is the true ore of our chalybs. The hidden center of our magnet abounds in salt. which salt is the menstruum in the sphere of the moon, and can calcine gold. This center turns towards the pole with an archetic appetite, in which the virtue of the chalybs is exalted into degrees. In the pole it is the heart of Mercury, the true fire, in which is the rest of its master, sailing through this great sea, that it may arrive at both the Indies and direct its course by the aspect of the North Star, which our magnet will manifest. Chapter 5 of the Chaos of the Sages. Let the student incline his ear to the united verdict of the sages, who describe this work as analogous to the creation of the world. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. These words are sufficient for the student of our art. The heaven must be united to the earth on the couch of friendship, and so shall he reign in glory forever. The earth is the heavy body, the womb of the minerals, which it cherishes in itself. Although it brings to light trees and animals, the heaven is the place where the great lights revolve, and through the air transmit their influences to the lower world. But in the beginning, all was one confused chaos. Our chaos is, as it were, a mineral earth by virtue of its coagulation, and yet also volatile air, in the center of which is the heaven of the sages, the astral center, which with its light irradiates the earth to its surface. What man is wise enough to evolve out of this world a new king, who shall redeem his brothers from their natural wickedness, by dying, being lifted on high, and giving his flesh and blood for the life of the world? I thank thee, O God, that thou hast concealed these things from the wise and prudent, and hast revealed them unto babes. Chapter 6 of the Air of the Sages. Our air, like the air of the firmament, divides the waters, and as the waters under the firmament are visible to us mortals, while we are unable to see the waters above the firmament, so in our work we see the extracentral mineral waters, but are unable to see those which, through hidden within, nevertheless have a real existence. They exist, but do not appear until it please the artist. As the author of the new light has testified, our air keeps the extracentral waters from mingling with those at the center. If through the removal of this impediment they were enabled to mingle, their union would be indissoluble. Therefore, the external vapors and burning sulfur do stiffly adhere to our chaos, and unable to resist its tyranny, the pure flies away from the fire in the form of a dry powder. This, then, should be your great object. The arid earth must be irrigated until its pores softened with water of its own kind. Then this thief, with all the workers of iniquity, will be cast out. The water will be purged of its leprous stain by the addition of true sulfur, and you will have the spring whose waters are sacred to the maiden queen Diana. This thief is armed with all the malignity of arsenic, and is feared and eschewed by the winged youth. Through the central water be his spouse, yet the youth cannot come to her until Diana, with the wings of her doves, purges the poisonous air, and opens a passage to the bridal chamber. Then the youth enters easily through the pores, presently shaking the waters above, and stirring up a rude and ruddy cloud. Do thou, O Diana, bring in the water over him, even unto the brightness of the moon. So the darkness on the face of the abyss will be dispersed by the Spirit moving in the waters. Thus, at the bidding of God, light will appear on the seventh day, and then this Sophic creating of Mercury shall be completed, from which time, until the revolution of the year, you may wait for the birth of the marvelous child of the sun, who will come to deliver his brethren from every stain. Chapter 7. Of the first operation, preparation of Mercury by means of the flying eagles. Know, my brother, that the exact preparation of the eagles of the sages is the highest effort of our art. In this first section of our work, nothing is to be done without hard and persevering toil, though it is quite true that afterwards the substance develops under the influence of gentle heat without any imposition of hands. The sages tell us that their eagles must be taken to devour the lion, and that they gain the victory all the sooner if they are very numerous. Also, that the number of the work varies between 7 and 9. The Mercury of the sages is the bird of Hermes, now called a goose, now a pheasant. But the eagles are always mentioned in the plural, and number from 3 to 10. Yet this is not to be understood as if there should be so many weights or parts of the water to one of the earth, but the water must be taken so oftentimes actuated or sharpened as there are eagles numbered. This actuation is made by sublimation. There is then one sublimation of the Mercury of the sages when one eagle is mentioned, and the seventh sublimation will so strengthen your Mercury that the bath of your king will be ready. Let me tell you now how this part of the work is performed. Take 4 parts of our fiery dragon, in whose belly is hidden the magic chalybs, and 9 parts of our magnet. Mingle them by means of a fierce fire in the form of a mineral water, the foam of which must be taken away. Remove the shell and take the kernel. Purge what remains once more by means of fire and the sun, which may be done easily if Saturn shall have seen himself in the mirror of Mars. Then you will obtain our chameleon, or chaos, in which all the virtues of our art are potentially present. This is the infant hermaphrodite, who through the bite of a mad dog has been rendered so fearful of water, that though of a kindred nature, it always eschews and avoids it. But in the grove of Diana are 2 doves that soothe its rabid madness, if applied by the art of the nymph Mercury. Take it and plunge it under water till it perish therein. Then the rabid and black dog will appear, panting and half suffocated. Drive him down with vigorous blows, and the darkness will be dispelled. Give it wings when the moon is full, and it will fly away as an eagle, leaving the doves of Diana dead, though when first taken they should be living. Repeat this 7 times, and your work is done. The gentle coction which follows is child's play and a woman's work. Chapter 8. Of the difficulty and length of the first operation. Some alchemists fancy that their work from beginning to end is a mere idle entertainment, but those who make it so will reap what they have sown, viz., nothing. We know that next to the divine blessing and the discovery of the proper foundation, nothing is so important as unwearied industry and perseverance in this first operation. It is no wonder, then, that so many students of this art are reduced to beggary. They are afraid of work and look upon our art as mere sport for their leisure moments. For no labor is more tedious than that which the preparatory part of our enterprise demands. Murenius earnestly entreats the king to consider this fact, and says that many sages have complained of the tedium of our work. To render a chaotic mass orderly, says the poet, is matter of much time and labor, and the noble author of the Hermetical Arcanum describes it as an Herculean task. There are so many impurities clinging to our first substance, and a most powerful intermediate agent is required for the purpose of eliciting from our polluted menstruum the royal diadem. But when you have once prepared your mercury, the most formidable part of your task is accomplished, and you may indulge in that rest which is sweeter than any work, as the sage says. Chapter 9. On the superiority of our mercury over all metals. Our mercury is that serpent which devoured the companions of Cadmus, after having first swallowed Cadmus himself, though he was far stronger than they. Yet Cadmus will one day transfix this serpent, when he has coagulated it with his sulfur. Know that this, our mercury, is a king among metals, and dissolves them by changing their sulfur into a kindred mercurial substance. The mercury of 1, 2, or 3 eagles bears rule over Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus. The mercury from 3 to 7 eagles sways the moon. That of 10 eagles has power over the sun. Our mercury is nearer than any other unto the first eoness of metals. It has power to enter metallic bodies and to manifest their hidden depths. Chapter 10. On the sulfur which is in the mercury of the sages. It is a marvelous fact that our mercury contains active sulfur, and yet preserves the form and all the properties of mercury. Hence it is necessary that a form be introduced therein by our preparation, which form is a metallic sulfur. This sulfur is the inward fire, which causes the putrefaction of the composite sun. This sulphureous fire is the spiritual seed which our Virgin, still remaining immaculate, has conceived. For an uncorrupted virginity admits of a spiritual love, as experience and authority affirm. The two, the passive and the active principle, combined, we call our hermaphrodite. When joined to the sun, it softens, liquefies, and dissolves it with gentle heat. By means of the same fire, it coagulates itself, and by its coagulation produces the sun. Our pure and homogeneous mercury, having conceived inward sulfur through our art, coagulates itself under the influence of gentle outward heat, like the cream of milk, a subtle earth floating on the water. When it is united to the sun, it is not only coagulated, but the composite substance becomes softer day by day. The bodies are almost dissolved, and the spirits begin to be coagulated with a black color and a most fetid smell. Hence it appears that this spiritual metallic sulfur is in truth the moving principle in our art. It is really volatile, or unmatured gold, and by proper digestion is changed into that metal. If joined to perfect gold, it is not coagulated, but dissolves the corporeal gold and remains with it, being dissolved under one form, although before the perfect union death must proceed, that so they may be united after death. not simply in a perfect unity, but in 1,000 times more than perfect perfection. Chapter 11. Concerning the discovery of the perfect magistery, there are those who think that this art was first discovered by Solomon, or rather imparted to him by divine revelation. But though there is no reason for doubting that so wise and profoundly learned a sovereign was acquainted with our art, yet we happen to know that he was not the first to acquire the knowledge. It was possessed by Hermes the Egyptian, and some other sages before him, and we may suppose that they first sought a simple exaltation of imperfect metals into regal perfection, and that it was at first their endeavor to develop mercury, which is most like to gold in its weight and properties, into perfect gold. This, however, no degree of ingenuity could effect by any fire, and the truth gradually broke on their minds that an internal heat was required as well as an external one. So they rejected aquafortis and all corrosive solvents after long experiments with the same. Also, all salts except that kind which is the first substance of all salts, which dissolves all metals and coagulates mercury, but not without violence. Whence that kind of agent is again separated entire, both in weight and virtue, from the things it is applied to. They saw that the digestion of mercury was prevented by certain aqueous crudities and earthy dross, and that the radical nature of these impurities rendered their elimination impossible, except by the complete inversion of the whole compound. They knew that mercury would become fixed if it could be freed from their defiling presence, as it contains fermenting sulfur, which is only hindered by these impurities from coagulating the whole mercurial body. At length they discovered that mercury in the bowels of the earth was intended to become a metal, and that the process of development was only stopped by the impurities with which it had become tainted. They found that that which should be active in the mercury was passive, and that its infirmity could not be remedied by any means except the introduction of some kindred principle from without. Such a principle they discovered in metallic sulfur, which stirred up the passive sulfur in the mercury, and by allying itself with it, expelled the aforesaid impurities. But in seeking to accomplish this practically, they were met by another great difficulty. In order that this sulfur might be effectual in purifying the mercury, it was indispensable that it should itself be pure. All their efforts to purify it, however, were doomed to failure. At length they bethought them that it might possibly be found somewhere in nature in a purified condition, and their search was crowned with success. They sought active sulfur in a pure state, and found it cunningly concealed in the house of the ram. This sulfur mingled most eagerly with the offspring of Saturn, and the desired effect was speedily produced. After the malignant venom of the air of Mercury had been tempered, as already set forth at some length, by the doves of Venus, then life was joined to life by means of the liquid. The dry was moistened, the passive was stirred into action by the active, the dead was revived by the living. The heavens were indeed temporarily clouded over, but after a copious downpour of rain, serenity was restored. Mercury emerged in a hermaphroditic state. Then they placed it in the fire. In no long time they succeeded in coagulating it, and in its coagulation they found the sun and the moon in a most pure state. Then they considered that, before its coagulation, this mercury was not a metal, since on being volatilized it left no residue at the bottom of the distilling vessel, Hence they called it unmatured gold and their living or quicksilver. It also occurred to them that if gold were sown, as it were, in the soil of its own first substance, its excellence would probably be enhanced. And when they placed gold therein, the fixed was volatilized, the hard softened, the coagulated dissolved, to the amazement of nature herself. For this reason, they wedded these two to each other, put them in a still over the fire, and for many days regulated the heat in accordance with the requirements of nature. Thus the dead was revived, the body decayed, and a glorified spirit rose from the grave. The soul was exalted into the quintessence, the universal medicine for animals, vegetables, and minerals.